Rob Sperry, I'm in my car and I am in a massive snowstorm. There's been plenty of these snowstorms recently in Utah, and so I'm going to give you guys a little bit of in-depth on what it takes to be successful. And this is not going to be your standard just cliche training. I'm going to dive really in depth on this, and so I hope you guys enjoy. I hope you take notes, and I hope you give some feedback. And so if you are just joining us, as always, I love to see where people are watching from, where they're listening in from. So give a shout out from wherever you are in the entire world on where you're watching this from. And let's go ahead and let's get this thing rocking and rolling. Let's get this thing started. So there are 3 versions of yourself. This is where we're going to start. And we're going to build upon all these principles. Again, this is going to be really in depth. This is not going to be some cliche training. I'm going to give you guys, as always, my very best. And so the first version of yourself is the public version of yourself that you need to understand. The public version of yourself is the best version of yourself, right? You know, I've seen all the time where I see people that are arguing and they're in bad moods, and all of a sudden they meet somebody brand new and it's like, how are you in best version? I've seen the same thing even with maybe my wife and I are having a disagreement, and then all of a sudden she meets a friend, she's like, hi, how are you? And she's just like, all of a sudden, you know, giving that best version. I've done the exact same thing. So we've all done that. And so that's the first version. It's the public version. We give the best version of ourselves. Then there's the private version of ourselves. That's the version that our friends and family get to see. That's the hangry version of ourselves sometimes, right? What does hangry stand for? It stands for hungry and angry. And so we all know we turn into different people. I know at least I do. If you don't turn into a different person when you're hangry, you are not human. And so I look at that and I say our friends and family, they get to see the hangry version of ourselves. I look at somebody like Tiger Woods. We knew the public version of him, but we got to find out the private version of himself, and it was much different of what his close, family knew about him, what his wife knew about him, what was going on. And so you've got to realize, our goal is to match all of the versions of ourselves as close as possible. Then there's the secret self, right? That's the secret version of us. And the secret self is the version that nobody else gets to see. Nobody knows, just you. It's your inner thoughts. And so what do you think? What do you do when no one else knows? When nobody else knows what's going on, if you get, something maybe on your taxes where you got an extra $600 and nobody else knows, what if, you got some accidental bank deposit, or what if you told, whatever, just your inner thoughts. That's the secret version of yourself. So number 1 is public version of yourself. Number 2 is private version of yourself. Number 3 is the secret version of yourself. So this is where the leadership talk comes in. I want you to write down, you don't need to say anything, but I want you to write down how closely aligned are the 3 versions of yourself. Because we can look at people like Gandhi, and we just know that Gandhi, without knowing, right, his secret self, his public and private version of themselves were just so closely aligned that we know the secret self, the secret version of himself had to be there as well. We know that. We know Mother Teresa, same thing. We know Jesus Christ, same thing. And so my question to you is with your public version, private version, and secret version of yourselves, how closely aligned are they? And you need to know this, because I promise you, if you want to become the person, if you want to become the leader, there's only so long you can fake it, and eventually people know. They can see it. They can see right through you. You've got to be able to build that trust, because think about this. If you're telling everybody one thing, and then the private version of yourself is something else, and then the secret version is a whole nother level, how can you even trust yourself? And if you can't trust yourself, and you're a leader, how can you expect other people to trust you? And if you don't trust yourself, how in the world can you feel like you deserve success? How can you feel like you expect success? How can you demand success from the world if you know that the 3 versions of yourself are so far off? It's hard. It's difficult. And so in this business, when people are looking at who you are as a person, when they're looking at who you are as a leader, you've got to do the best you can to match the 3 versions of yourself. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be perfect. Maybe your public version is a 10, and your private version is an 8, and your secret version of yourself is a 7, okay? Maybe all 3 versions, they're pretty close, but your job is to get them as closely aligned as you possibly can. And your job after that, as you're doing that, is building trust and building trust to yourself. If you say you're going to wake up at 7 in the morning, you never wake up at 7 in the morning, you just took out a withdrawal of trust. If you say that you're going to go work out at the gym 3 times a week and you don't do it, you just took out withdrawals of trust. So if you want to build trust, you need to keep your word. You know, one of my friends and a new mentor, very successful, just said that's how you build self-esteem. That's what you should base your self-esteem on, is do what you say you're going to do. Keep your word. And if you do that, all of a sudden now you trust yourself. And if you trust yourself, you know other people should trust you. And they start to say, you know what? Rob does what he says he's going to do. I'm going to trust him. And it makes all the difference. So you need to make sure that you are learning these success principles, and it goes even further. I'm going to teach you a couple more principles. So if this has been helpful for you, please drop a 1 in the comments if this has been insightful for you. If there's something that really stands out for you, please let me know what stands out the most to you, and let the audience know as well, as it gives people other insight of what it is that you're learning. Okay, the next step is people want to know, well, what do I do, Rob? I'm doing better. I'm doing all the personal development. I'm taking massive action, but I haven't had the success I want to have. So the next thing that I would say to you is you got to understand the credibility code. You got to understand the law of credibility. If everything I'm teaching you right now, you say this is profound, but Warren Buffett comes and teaches it to you, what's the difference going to be? Your mind's going to be blown. Like, I promise you, it's going to be 1,000 times more powerful. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, you guys need to listen to what Warren Buffett just taught me. It's incredible, right? Now, if somebody else comes and teaches the exact same thing that I just taught you word for word, but they've never made more than $200, what's the difference going to be? It's going to be a massive difference. So even when you're doing what's right, remember, compensation always catches up to skill set and effort, but it's almost always delayed. You got to remember the credibility code. Credibility is one of the great amplifiers. It creates massive momentum for you. You can do and say the same exact thing, but because you have that credibility, that trust, right? You get that speed of trust. You get that speed of credibility. And so for you, you got to keep pushing through. You got to keep doing what you need to do. You got to keep doing all the basics. Successful people just do the basics better. And then eventually, as you start to have a little bit more success, it's easier to have success if you keep doing the same things. You can't have success and then all of a sudden say, oh, I'm just going to wait for things to happen. So I'm saying if you're doing the exact same amount of effort and work, now all of a sudden, let's say you've made $500,000 and you say the exact same thing, you do the exact same amount of work, now you're going to have even more success because of that. And in fact, you can do less and have more success. So you need to understand the credibility code as you're doing this business, as you're matching your public, private, and secret versions of yourself, as you're building trust with yourself and you're building trust with others. As you start to do this and you start to take massive action, eventually the law of averages is going to kick in. If you talk to enough people, whatever business venture you're in, it doesn't matter, and you're doing the right things, eventually the law of averages says you're going to find someone. As you find someone, eventually what's going to happen is you two together, as you're building a business, whatever you're doing, you're going to find someone else. You're going to have a little bit more success, and then a little bit more success. And if you guys have ever heard the flywheel analogy, a flywheel, eventually as you keep pushing a flywheel, eventually, as that thing keeps going around, eventually it just keeps going without pushing it. And there's no way to attribute which push made that happen, but it just keeps going. And so for you and your business, you're starting out with this teeny snowball. I'll give a snowball analogy because right now it's freezing cold and it is pouring snow. It's coming in like crazy. So you build that snowball and it's freezing, and you drop the snowball, and then all of a sudden you build it where it's bigger and it's freezing, and all of a sudden it's a little boulder, and you start pushing, and you stop because you're tired, but it's bigger. You're like, I'm making progress. And then you push it again, it's a little bit bigger, and you're making even more progress. And then all of a sudden you push it and it goes down the mountain. You can't even stop it even if you tried, because you've created so much momentum. You've created that, right? And so it takes time. So you guys have got to understand these success principles. They take time. It's always harder than you thought it was going to be. Everything worthwhile, it's always harder than you thought it was going to be. Every single time, unless you got lucky. every single time. But understanding that, knowing these success principles, makes it easier of, okay, let me match the 3 versions of myself. Well, I would take accountability. I'd find somebody that you can shoot a text to at least every single week, if not every single day, and start working on some of the different versions of yourself. You need to tell them what's wrong with your secret self. If you've got different vices and things that control you and own you, if you're embarrassed, fine. But I would say find somebody that you're willing to take that full accountability, because a goal that isn't measured isn't a goal. A goal that isn't written down, they say, is merely a wish, and I promise you that that's absolutely true. And so if you follow these principles, know that a lot of times we're not that far off. Know that it takes longer than we thought, but understand the credibility code, understand the building trust, understand the deposits and withdrawals, understand that you're the only one that's doing a disservice to yourself when you say you're going to work out and you don't, when you say that you're going to eat well and you don't, when you say that you're going to show up to a friend's appointment and you don't. It's you. If you can't trust you, who else can trust you? You won't feel like you deserve success. You won't expect success. And I promise you, you won't demand success. So again, I appreciate all of you. Please drop in the comments what was the most insightful part of this training for you and how I can better serve you. Thank you, and let's make it a great day, great week, great month, great year. And notice I said let's make it. Don't just have one, make it, because it is 100% a choice.